All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to call this gathering to order. My name is Stephanie Landrum. I'm the president and CEO of the Alexandria Economic Development Partnership. We're going to learn a lot today, but one of the first things that I'll start by saying is one of the reasons I'm standing up here to greet you is because we're thinking about this as a continuation of something we did back in 2007. And I happen to be one of the only people who was actually here in 2007 on the city and AEDP team. And so I don't know what that says about me. But we first wanted to acknowledge that we potentially have an overflow crowd today, which is incredible. So at any time, if you need some space, feel free to go out to the outdoor area. We have an overflow room. We're expecting a lot of people to come and go since this is a very long program, but we're really excited to have you all here. As housekeeping, I'll also say that the restrooms are out to the left, should you need them. And we will have snacks and refreshments throughout to kind of keep everyone's energy up. Also want to start today by thanking the great team here at the Westin, the general manager, Ravi Gower, and his fantastic team, Paul Zaloka and Angie Vise, have been really partnering with us to host this. The Westin is one of our kind of prized properties here in Alexandria. It is the largest property to host events like this on kind of the east side of Alexandria, and so we're really, really thankful to partner with them and show off their space. Thank you. Yes. Today's effort is sort of a co-branded event between the City of Alexandria and AEDP, and so want to acknowledge that the entire City Council is joining us today, and they're up here in the front row, and so the mayor is going to kick us off in a second, but wanted to acknowledge all the members of council who are here with us and will be with us today, also the city manager and various members of the leadership team with the city staff. We also are fortunate to have our delegate, Elizabeth Bennett Parker, here with us today, and so just wanted to recognize her. So as I mentioned, this is an important sort of point for us to be thinking about the future of Alexandria's economy. As some of you might know, we took a big swing last year, and a lot of people who hadn't thought about economic development in the city for a while kind of perked up and said, hey, what is our plan and what are we doing? And so following that big swing, we, under the leadership of City Council, decided that doing another summit like this to really have a community conversation around the future of how we grow would be a great way to spend some time. Pile on top of that a pandemic. And then I'm not sure what we're supposed to be calling what's happening at the federal government right now, but certainly that has impacts on us that seem to change on a daily basis. And it really did seem like a very smart time for us to rethink our vision and strategy for our economy and how we grow. Before we start, we did want to acknowledge that we've got a couple of really big wins since our last time here together back in 2007. If I just hit play, is this going to play? Yes, it is. So that video is something that we use to tell Alexandria's story to companies and investors who are thinking about Alexandria, and so we wanted to start today with that. Today's agenda is packed, and it's mixed with some education for all of us so that we all kind of start on the same page. Some initial findings from the consultant TIP Strategies who's been working with us, and then an inspirational keynote from Kevin Kelly, who we're super excited to have here with us. And then comes the hard work. We're going to break into groups. We're going to talk through some of the key strategies of how we grow. The goal for kind of the after summit is that we're going to have a playbook that council, the community, and frankly businesses and development entities understand and we're all kind of working towards. And the reason we know that this can be successful is because this is what we did back in 2007. And I know for some people this is going to be hard to believe, but All of these projects came as a result of the work that we did in 2007 through 2009. Our waterfront, we spent some time on it this morning, was a bunch of old warehouses in 2007 and 2009. There was no plan for it. There was no metro at Potomac Yard. We didn't have public art installations to drive tourism. All of those things were sort of laid out in this plan. The great news is that we've accomplished everything that we did in 2007, but now we need a new vision and a new set of kind of mandates. So that is our goal for today. I hope everyone is up for the challenge. In order to make sure that you guys are fully inspired, I'm going to invite the mayor to join us to kick us off, and then we will move into the rest of the program.
Thank you, Stephanie. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Economic Summit. As Stephanie said, it is really remarkable to be able to look out and see this room this full and this many people excited about charting our path forward. Our city, like many others, we are at a critical inflection point. As you know, we are facing headwinds from almost every direction, whether it's global shifts like rapid automation, artificial intelligence, and changing consumer habits, rising prices, cuts to the federal workforce, a shifting in federal spending, and even the ripple effects that we're starting to see from tariffs, or climate change. The issues we are facing are big and mounting, and we are feeling them from King Street to Del Rey to the West End. They continue to hit home, and they continue to push us to ask questions about our economy, how we're going to allocate resources, how we think about our workforce, and so much more. And while the challenges are real, what I hope you will take away from today is that the opportunities are also real. Because here in our city, we believe that what seems impossible is actually an invitation. We are passionate about innovating towards the future, and we understand that any challenge we face is actually a call to action. It is a call to unlock innovation that lives within our small businesses and local entrepreneurs. It is a call to unlock the innovation that is created when neighbors come together to figure out how we solve real challenges. It's a call to unlock the innovation and the ideas that are sitting in this room. Because think about it. As you heard from Stephanie, years ago, I don't think any of us would have thought that Potomac Yard would be transformed into the Virginia Tech Innovation Campus. If you're like me and you live on the West End, I can tell you many of my neighbors had pretty much given up hope that Landmark Mall was going to be anything different than a dusty old Sears at that point. But we never took our eyes off the vision. We kept going and we stayed focused. And as you heard from Stephanie, we couldn't have kept that focus if we didn't have a playbook to go back to, if we didn't have a strategy. Because you can be as creative as you want to be, you can have all the ideas in the world, but if you don't have a plan for implementation, then we can't move things forward. And so today is about getting us back to that strategy. Today is about figuring out what do we need for an intentional approach that prioritizes impact, that aligns with our values, and that is built for and by our community. It has now been more than 15 years since the last time we put together a comprehensive economic strategy. And so that changes now. I want you to know, when you stepped in this room, I hope you felt a new energy and a new excitement, because we are open to new ideas. We want to hear your bold and creative thinking for how we reimagine new ways of working. We are open and ready to have conversations with anyone who's willing to dream bigger for our neighborhoods and for our city. And that is why today is so important. Our path forward must be grounded in the vision of our residents and our businesses, but also the insights of our data. Because when we listen deeply to our community and we pair that wisdom with strong analytics, we're going to be able to create a strategy that is not only innovative and impactful, but one that is actionable and enduring. More importantly, we're going to be able to create a strategy that is inclusive, sustainable, holistic, and powered by partnership. I say inclusive because this council is clear and this council is committed to making sure that our growth benefits all of us. Equitable development isn't just the right thing to do, it is the smart thing to do. Sustainable because we're not about just chasing quick wins. We're about making sure that we are building long-term value for our environment, for our residents, for our workforce, and for our tax base. Holistic because this is not the Potomac Yard Summit. And I want to be clear, this is the Alexandria Economic Development Summit because it's going to require us unlocking the ideas and potential of every single part of our city. And a strategy that is powered by partnership because none of us can do this alone. The more we collaborate, the stronger we will be. And so to every person in this room, I hope you heard this is not a case where you get to come and just sit back and listen. We're going to ask you to do some work. We're going to ask you to be critical. We're going to ask you to ask the tough questions and to push us to think differently. Because this is what this environment requires. The things we did in 2007 probably will not work today. We need to be thinking differently about what are the next set of catalytic projects. What are the ways that we foster inclusive growth and community revitalization? How do we think about ways that our young people can benefit with career and educational opportunities? How do we think about the next phase of our workforce development and the next opportunities we have before us? As you heard, we have a track record of getting things done because we have a track record of figuring out how to work together. I would also argue we have a track record of success because the most important thing about economic development is place. Businesses choose to locate where their employees want to live. People choose to live in Alexandria because they want to be in a place that is connected, that is safe, that is powerful, and that is inspiring. Our city is a great place. Our city has amazing assets from which we will get to build and which we will talk about today. And so today is reflecting on where we've come, but it's also thinking about the city we have the potential to be. It's a time for us to think about the evolution of our next strategy, what tools, what ideas, and what possibilities we have the opportunity to consider so that we won't just weather the headwinds, but that we will come out more resilient and prosperous than ever. And so today, we begin the work of co-creating our economic development strategy. It will be one that reflects our strengths, one that embraces our challenges, and one that charts a new course for shared prosperity. Let's use this time and let's use this moment to put together a playbook that is rooted in place, that is driven by innovation, that is guided by you, and that is overflowing with opportunity. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to getting to work.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Mayor Gaskins. So next up, we're going to start today, as I said, with some education. We've invited 3 experts that I'm going to invite up to the stage with me now. John Roberts is the managing partner of TIP Strategies. He's going to moderate and contribute to this conversation. Stephanie Jennings is a research director for the Mid-Atlantic for CBRE, which is a commercial real estate company. And she's a local here to Alexandria. And Megan Welch is the Vice President of Knowledge Work for the Virginia Economic Development Partnership. And we've invited them to start the conversation because while today's focus is very clearly on Alexandria's economy, we are not in a bubble. And what happens regionally and nationally impacts the way that we can do business. And so we wanted these 3 experts to talk to us a little bit about some trends, how businesses are thinking about making investment, and kind of set the stage for our larger conversation. So with that, I'm going to hand this mic to John.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And let me just say it's a pleasure to be in this community, and not just because the community is so beautiful, as you all know, but because you have an incredible leadership. Mayor Gaskins, Jim Pierjean, an old friend, and the entire partnership, and Stephanie in particular, I think are really remarkable leaders at a national level. So what we're going to do is set the stage for the discussions to follow, and I'll be a little less formal and sit down. And by way of introduction, I'll start with myself and then turn it over to my fellow panelists. I'm the managing partner of TIP Strategies. As you heard, we're an economic development consultancy based in Austin, Texas, with offices across the country, and it's an honor to be part of this process. And with that, Stephanie, if you would introduce yourself and your CBRE connections, it'd be wonderful.
Sure. So as Stephanie said, I lead Mid-Atlantic research for CBRE, which is the largest global commercial real estate firm. Prior to this, I had senior level roles in real estate market research and economic development, primarily in New York. I worked in Lower Manhattan post 9/11. Fast forward to 2019, my family and I were very happy to move here from New York, and we love Alexandria.
Hi there. Megan Welch. I am with the Virginia Economic Development Partnership. We're the state's economic development authority, working hand in hand with regional and local economic development offices across the Commonwealth to grow Virginia's economy. And my team focuses on everything that Alexandria does. Honestly, it's knowledge work, which we define as software and cybersecurity companies, business processing, business services, financial services companies, and aerospace and defense innovation. So anything that is in that office-based market. And my team does lead generation and ecosystem development opportunities. So really appreciate the invitation and look forward to the conversation today.
Good. Well, thank you. And I have approximately 2 hours worth of material. And Jim said I could take the entire time to do that. But rather than push the boundaries there, I'm going to invite my fellow panelists to weigh in on some of the slides that I'd like to show you. And we'll do that quickly so we'll have time to delve a little bit deeper into some of the questions that I have of the two of you. But it's no surprise to say that these are extraordinary times, and there are a series of crises in economic development that we will have to be dealing with pretty much nonstop from here on out. And this is just a sampling of it, and this is why I'm not entirely joking about the 2 hours. We could spend the next 2 days on these topics. But let me begin with this. And this is the World Economic Forum. Every year it's asked to do a threat assessment and take a quick look at where and these are the same people, as both of you know, who are doing the site selection that chooses Alexandria and others. And this is an incredibly competitive environment. But this is what global business leaders are saying, in a sense, keeps them up at night. And from a short-term and a long-term perspective. And it won't be much of a stretch to see just how immediately impacted the communities that you work with, Megan, and have to deal with this. But one thing I want to add to this, and thank you, Mishka, for pointing this out. This is something that changes by generation. The things that are anxiety points for some are not necessarily the same for others. And so, for instance, the technological stresses, the misinformation that you saw from global leaders, is really something that an older generation is more concerned with, whereas the younger generation is more concerned with environmental and economic factors. But the first of those that we want to delve into a little bit in detail is real estate itself. And really, Stephanie, I think this question of disruption, let me just ask you straight away whether you think that this work from home is a continuing trend or whether it's going to change.
Sure. So I think, generally speaking, my company has done an enormous amount of research on this. We have our own anecdotal work that we do with clients. We do a lot of surveys of various tenants. We track a lot of different data points. And I think, generally speaking, we would say that we've reached kind of what we call a steady state, though we expect to continue to see a little bit of an uptick. But when we look back at data, the biggest jump in return to office after the disruption of the pandemic was in 2021. By 2021 and 22. By 2023, it was a much more measured growth rate. And now with the new mandates from the federal government, we've been looking again at the data to see what it says. And there have been some additional climbs, but those are most most prominent in submarkets that are heavily tenanted by the federal government.
And so from your point of view, Megan, is this something that you're seeing across the state in Virginia and specific to the Alexandria area?
Absolutely. We're seeing, especially in the projects that haven't located here, but when we're talking to prospects that we're trying to attract to Virginia, companies are using either the carrot or the stick. You've got companies who are really invested in the real estate market, like a CoStar or an Amazon, who are saying, yes, we want our employees to be here. We want them to return to office. They're not using return to work because we want to make sure that it's clear everyone was working from home, but they're returning to office 5 days a week week. We're seeing some companies say, listen, we've invested in these beautiful office spaces, so we're not going to mandate it. We want you to be here, and we want to make it an environment so you enjoy being here and you can get out into the community. So I would say most of the projects that we're seeing and that we have located in the state and in Northern Virginia in the last year plus have been 3 to 4 days in the office. A lot of them all 5 days.
Well, and I know that you haven't seen these particular slides, but you know about these trends. So how does this particular one that's up right now bode for Alexandria? So and for those of you who are looking at this along with us, you'll see that urban office CBD is at a very different rate than suburban. This suggests to us that this trend, I'd be interested to have you comment on the trend. Do you think that will continue? Do you think it's an advantage for communities like Alexandria that this lower vacancy rate will continue?
So our data shows the trends a little bit differently when we look at the DC metro area. DC proper had historically had a very, very low vacancy rate. The kind of historic norm was between, I would say, 6 and 12%. It's now at 22, 23%. Northern Virginia is also at a peak vacancy rate and kind of has been hovering at a pretty high vacancy rate, but started at a higher point, and that actually started pre-pandemic. After the global financial crisis. This is one of the trends that the pandemic sped up as remote and hybrid work came into play. Just for some context within the metro area, the metro area vacancy rate that from what we track is about 22%. Northern Virginia, very similar. City of Alexandria, very similar. Old Town is actually at about 18%, so doing notably better than the metro region overall in Northern Virginia, but that's still much higher than where we want it to be. Equilibrium for the market is when tenants and landlords are considered to be kind of on equal footing, and as an industry standard, that's around 10 to 12%. So once the vacancy rate gets up into the upper teens and into the 20s, and if it stays there, then we start to have other concerns about tax base and economic development and things.
So this is going to be a really important discussion point because this is CoStar data and this is national. And it suggests that your vacancy rates here in this area are considerably higher than they are in other parts of the country. And I'd love you both to comment on that.
So ours are not, so we track the market a little differently. Our data I'm not sure that our vacancy rate is much higher than when we look, apples to apples at our national data. And I think there's a little bit, the calculation is very different when you're comparing kind of the value of being in a CBD versus suburban markets too. I think post-pandemic, or really during the pandemic, there was a thought that lots of companies and organizations would set up these suburban outposts or would move out to the residential areas where their workers live. And that happened some, but has not actually happened in droves as a major trend. Okay. And there is still a consideration, typically when tenants are looking at, are making are deciding where to live, they'll try to choose something that is at a more central point to the region's talent, not just acknowledging where their existing workers live, but where they want their future to live. And that's Northern Virginia and Alexandria are really well positioned in that regard.
So you've really teed up this next slide perfectly, and I'll give you a very difficult question, Megan, and you can answer it personally if you'd like. But this is a trend that we've been following. And it suggests does more than suggest, it really shows a pretty strong trend that we're less mobile generationally than we've ever been. And so when you think about it from the Virginia perspective, and when you think about it from Alexandria and the DC area, what does this mean from a labor availability standpoint? How do you think about that?
So I'll comment on the previous slide real quick. Mm-hmm. I think another important lens to look at office vacancy rates is the flight to quality that we're seeing for office users.
I love that term.
So really it's around what type of office space are we looking at? And they're really looking at trophy space, Class A office space, and they're coming to us, particularly in the Northern Virginia market, already having identified 3 to 5 sites from site selection consultant groups like CBRE and others, and saying, hey, we're looking at these, we'll say 5 sites, 5 buildings, existing buildings. Let's talk about the talent that's around there and where we can best position ourselves for future growth. And then also as a community thinking about which sites and buildings are Class B, Class C that probably shouldn't be office spaces anymore, and maybe thinking about alternative uses for that. Speaking to the mobility factor, I would agree with everything Stephanie said about companies are looking to locate where their future talent is. And I'll share an anecdote that I was talking to a consultant earlier this week about a really sizable project that located in Roanoke, Virginia. Wells Fargo decided to locate a regional talent center in Roanoke, plans on creating 1,100 new jobs over the next 3 to 5 years there. And they landed there because they believe that the future of what they're looking to do is in attracting the Gen Z workforce. The workforce that is more fiscally savvy, they're career driven, they're outdoorsy, and they have these attributes that Wells Fargo believes is the future of their company. And so making sure you have that quality of life story is, I think, what allows companies to locate in a community that can live, work, and play in the same area.
So does this suggest to you, I really appreciate those comments, and I think they're spot on. Does this suggest to you that it's less likely that they'll be able to draw people to the area that are already there, the fact that we're less mobile?
I think, speaking as a millennial, I will move anywhere that has a cool vibe, right? I view Alexandria, frankly, as my second home because I'm up here all the time. But I think the millennial workforce is very transient, and the Gen Z and other workforce are a little more, they're choosing to locate somewhere based on the community, not necessarily the job. So you'll see people choose to locate somewhere and move because of the opportunity for the live-play factors, and then they'll find a job when they get there.
Stephanie, what's your take on that?
I wonder how much the focus on remote work is influencing this, because those most recent bars, I see a pretty big drop-off, and I think now that return to office trends have really kind of stabilized, if that's gonna change, because more people are gonna have to, you have to live within commute of where you work, and I think there might have been some movement. We've already seen movement in the data that we monitor of a reversal of some of the trends of people who moved farther out of the region during the pandemic, at the the height of the pandemic. That started to reverse and people were moving back in. So I don't know. I think that jury might be out on this one.
Yeah.
I'd also be interested to know, what this looks like specific to Virginia and the markets in Virginia.
It would be, yes.
Because,
very different.
like anecdotally, the city of Richmond, or the Richmond region, is significantly growing. They have 20 new people that wake up in Virginia, in the Richmond region every day, because of the mobility of the workforce and the attraction there. And so I'd be interested in kind of double click in there.
But I think these are the exact, we wanted to tee this up because these are exactly the sorts of things that every economic development organization is going to have to be solving for. But we're going to make a shift now to everyone else's favorite topic, which is AI. And I think it's no surprise to you that we would want to talk about this, because it is changing the way in which employers and employees are thinking about where they're going. And I like to put the question this way. It's a question that I think, as we think about AI, we have to ask this question: what is the human value of a job? And before I delve into what I think we mean when we talk about that, I'll ask you each let me put it in this context. And this is a very complicated slide, forgive me. It took me the better part of a couple of hours to figure this out. This is a McKinsey study. But it basically looked at the impact of AI with all of the professions. This is a global study of all of the professions. and how they would be impacted by AI. And so in terms of what we think of as knowledge workers, the impact is going to be even greater than it is where automation has already made a difference. So I'd love you both to comment on how we're going to think about AI from a workforce perspective. And so
I
go
have
ahead.
lots of thoughts on
Yes.
AI. So first of all, the way that we view AI is that it is a tool to enhance efficiency and productivity. I do not believe it is going to be replacing workers. It's going to be freeing up time for our highly skilled workers to take on more higher order tasks, that strategy development, that decision making that AI cannot do. So we've talked to companies across the Commonwealth, nationally, internationally, about how AI is impacting their work, and they've said the same things. We're thinking about and working with our talent ecosystem throughout Virginia to see how we might prepare our workforce, K-12, higher ed, and beyond, our upskilling our existing employees to be able to use AI in a responsible way, so that it can just provide a greater output quality for the work that they're doing.
And Stephanie?
So I think more about how this is going to affect commercial real estate.
Yes.
And I agree with you. I like your comments a lot about how it will affect the workforce. And I think we actually have a very recent analogy that we can kind of learn from, which is what's happened with law firms within the region over the last 7-ish years. Law firms have gone through a huge real estate footprint reset throughout the region, primarily in Washington, D.C. They traditionally were in the same space in older buildings for decades and decades. And then suddenly, within the last 10 years, really probably last 5 to 7 years, a lot of them started shedding very strategically, libraries and administrative space and storage space, and were able to dramatically reduce their footprint. And when they did that, that kind of unlocked them from space they'd been in potentially for decades, and there became a ton of movement within the market from an industry that was not prone to making a move. And when they did that, they all started moving. They started engaging in this flight to quality and moving from some of these older buildings into the city's newest, high quality buildings. So when you do that, you're moving into a more efficient floor plate, and you can take less space. You can fit the same operations in less space. So you're paying a lot more money on a square footage basis, but you're taking so much less that often tenants come out ahead. And this has been happening. This is one of the drivers of that vacancy rate, this huge footprint reset. We're sort of at the end of that cycle. But anytime we talk about really meaningful efficiencies in how people are leveraged and technology is leveraged, we could see down the line, we could see a wave of that. I think it's going to be a little while. I think a lot of people think that's around the corner. Real estate's typically kind of slow to respond. So I think I don't think this is around the corner per se, but that's where my head is.
So good moderators don't editorialize, but I'll break the rule here. I agree with both of you, but let me put a finer point on it and then get your reaction. I think this is a discussion we'll all be having. I was fortunate enough to be down in Australia and New Zealand recently, and the topic of AI came up quite a bit. And government agencies in New Zealand were being criticized for using AI. So what that suggests, which I found quite extraordinary, because it was counter to exactly what you're talking about, that increase in efficiency. There's a fear of it, if you will. It's a little bit like I have a daughter and a daughter-in-law both in academia, and their biggest concern is people are using AI to cheat. Well, is that when you use a calculator, are you cheating to do your math? And it's a silly question, but I think it's a relevant question. But this suggests to me, and this is the editorializing part of it, that a community that is at the forefront of incorporating AI will be at a competitive advantage.
I 100% agree with that. I actually had a conversation with a Fortune 100 company today about how we can partner with them to shift the narrative around the use of AI away from you're cheating. It's a shortcut to how do we use it in a meaningful way to accelerate the work that we're doing, and embedding that down into third grade education and fourth grade education, so that he equated it to kind of like using a phone, right? Like everyone knows how to use a phone now, and most of us are using them responsibly, right? And if we can teach people how to use AI in that responsible way, it's kind of the next just landmark.
But my
innovation.
abacus, I don't want to give up my abacus. So for those of you who still have questions about the speed at which this is happening, for those of you who can recognize this is a quantum computer model. But what's interesting about that, the quantum computer, all this is just a way of keeping a little tiny chip cool. And I'm prepared to geek out on you about quantum computing. I won't do it now and talk about qubits, but I will tell you that the speed at which quantum computing is moving is ahead of what everyone expected. As little as a year ago, the projections were 10 years before quantum computing. Now it's as little as 5 years. And quantum computing, from an economic development perspective, means that the data center construction is rapidly going to increase. And so I would love, beginning with you, Megan, to talk about how much pressure data centers are putting on you at the state.
Sure. So it may be a secret to some, but in the data center world, it's not a secret. Virginia is home to the largest concentration of data centers in the world, and that is because of the fiber infrastructure that's out in Loudoun County. With that comes a lot of demands on energy. So you're seeing companies really think strategically about resources. You're seeing localities think strategically about resources from utilities and power and water. So it's an ongoing conversation. Virginia has a ton of opportunity with data centers, and we're seeing that activity pushed down away from there's still activity in Loudoun County, but data center companies are more willing to go into more rural communities for that investment. So you've seen a company like AWS announce $35 billion in investment to establish new data center campuses around the Commonwealth. That's happening in the suburbs of Charlottesville, in Louisa, in Culpeper County, and you're seeing it move down to Fredericksburg and the Richmond region as well. So you've got localities that are really interested in it, but understanding it does take a lot of power and water infrastructure. Right. And then you have localities that are not so interested in it anymore.
Right. And this is just up the road from y'all. I think you recognize this. And so it's pretty much everywhere. Well, we don't want to run short on time here, so we're going to cover one more, everyone's favorite topic right now, which is federal funding. And no easy subject. And what I'd like to begin with you, Stephanie, is this push and pull between a reduced federal workforce on the one hand, at the same time that you're getting a mandate to return to the office. How do you balance those two?
So there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, I think the return to office among federal workers is happening. It's being rolled out. It's still, it's happening agency by agency. So we are seeing, we're seeing a lot of changes there. There's a lot of, there are a good bit of agencies we're hearing that are short on space for people to sit. Some of them contracted to the, prior in-office mandate. So there's a big change there. But, and then the change in federal workforce will kind of counterbalance that a bit. But I think, there's a lot to be seen there too.
Well, and this particular slide puts a finer point on something, and our data team put this together, and I was a little surprised by it. If you take all of the military, broadly speaking, related occupations, workforce, it's really dominates. And so what does that mean for Alexandria and for the region in terms of economic opportunity? And I'll start with you.
I'll jump in here. I think there's obviously a lot of negative and real impacts of the federal policy. implementation that's happening right now. But I think if we try to find a silver lining about some of the opportunities that are there, we have directives from the federal government that they want to push innovation and R&D expenses out to the private sector. So I think that's a real opportunity to grow and attract innovation companies that is particularly in defense and aerospace, which are two industries that my team covers, and looking at companies that are ready to spend those investments and then contract with the federal government to utilize and implement those. So I think that's an opportunity. Certainly with the real estate market and federal lease cancellations, there's opportunities to think about what those office spaces could be in the future, and maybe reposition them to move forward with kind of what the vision of the community is.
I think there's also, this is another area, or I guess aspect to, we just don't know yet. I think, we're monitoring a lot of what's happening, a lot of data points around what's happening and changes in the federal government. And I think all the focus right now has been, and rightly so, has been on change in headcount. I don't want to discount, that's been very impactful to individuals and families and organizations. But when we think about the impact on the region and the local economy and the local market, what we're seeing is spending is at least as important, if not more important, to understanding what could happen. We looked at 2 prior real estate market cycles to get an idea of how different things can kind of trend. In the 90s, there was a significant cut in federal headcount, but at the same time, government spending actually increased. And we saw at the same time, while that was happening, private sector employment really increased. And at the same time, there's specific real estate market fundamentals improved. And what that tells us is that a lot of federal workers moved over to the private sector. We looked at a more recent economic cycle, and when there was a not as severe, but a shrinking of the federal workforce, government spending stayed pretty much the same, fell a bit, and everything was kind of stagnant. So I think there understandably has been a lot of focus on employment, changes in employment. People have been directly impacted by that. But when we're thinking about the region's economy and real estate market, I think we need to understand more about what's going to happen with spending, and that there's not been too much. That's where I think an area of great uncertainty right now.
Well, I really appreciate your comments. We're going to just quickly wrap up by talking about what we're not going to talk about. But that I think, and you have, and Stephanie, what do you call it? You have a thought leadership group here. What's that name of that again? Thinkers in Residence. And I applaud you for having that, because it's exactly these kinds of discussions that puts a community at a competitive advantage. And one of the things that we like to think about from a TIP standpoint is not just who you're in competition with, but really who you can look to that has been at the forefront of these issues. Because the competitive landscape is as intense and perhaps more intense than it's ever been. And there will be winners and losers. And our contention is that those communities that are able to look forward, and I think Alexandria is clearly one of those, that can look forward on these issues. And looking forward means seeing those opportunities. I think the mayor put it beautifully. Every challenge is a call to action, I think is what you said. And I think that's an excellent way of putting it. And so among the things that we haven't talked about, the equity question, now we can't use the language anymore, but who wants declining neighborhoods? No one. So by whatever language we want to use, we need to see that that commitment stays firm for us. Immigration is another aspect of that. It affects every bit of the workforce. I think both of you could talk extensively about what it means in certain professions to not have those workers available to you. The climate question, especially for a younger generation, and how you're proving your climate resiliency. Health, we've forgotten the pandemic, it seems, in many ways. Other pandemics are not only possible, but likely. So who will be on the forefront of being able to protect against those and being resilient in that regard? And then tariffs. I think and I'll let you both have the last word on the question of domestic versus international recruitment and what it can mean for these communities. And then I think we're pretty close to our time. And well, let's start with you.
I think talent is always a big question. We have a lot of that here. I think it,
Easy.
remains to be seen. Yeah.
Yep.
I'll say that I think Northern Virginia is always one of our kind of economic engines when it comes to knowledge work because of the diversity of the workforce here. You've got 1 in 10 workers here who are not from the U.S., and that is a really unique thing that continues to attract companies. So leaning in on that and sharing those stories, having kind of local ambassadors of, hey, I've lived in California, but I moved here in the last 5 years, and here's why, because of the vibrancy of the community. Internationally, I'll let you know next week. We have a big Select USA Summit that's we've got 130 meetings with companies from around the world next week where we're going to talk to them about locating in Virginia and what that means. And from the conversations I've had so far, there's still a lot of interest. And I think from the federal impacts perspective, we need to craft a story around that, but also we need to do a better job about talking around the commercial activity that's happening in the region. We were with some consultants earlier this week, and one of them mentioned to me, like, yeah, I really only think about Northern Virginia as like federal government. And I'm like, well, there's so much more here. We need to tell you about it. So, taking those companies like Motley Fool and other companies that are headquartered here and having them be ambassadors for your region and having them talk to companies directly about what it means to locate here is also a great thing to do.
Great. Well, thank you both, and thank you all for the opportunity.
Okay, I'm going to invite the rest of the TIP team up. They're going to present some key findings. Another housekeeping for people who joined, who've come in. There is an overflow room if you want to sit. You can hear the audio. And I would ask the people in the audience, if you have a seat empty next to you, could you raise your hand? And perhaps if people in the back wanted to fill in. Don't want anyone's feet to be tired because we've got a lot more content to go. So I am going to bring up Tracy, Jen, and Mishka to the stage. Also, there are refreshments outside, restrooms. We're all adults. This is a long program. Do what you need to do. We expect movement, and we appreciate everyone's participation. One final thing I'll say is this part of the program will have some participation, so if you have mobile phones... Oh, just kidding. Nope. Keep those mobile phones closed. Pay attention.
Oh, God.
This one's yours. There's one for each of you. Yours is there. Yep.
Perfect, thank you. Or I can do it however we want to. Well, hello, everyone. I think we made the announcement about the seats, right? So everyone could be seated at some point in time. I'm Tracy McDaniel, president of TIP Strategies. I join John and the team here representing the firm. And also, I want to give you some insights about today. We're going to talk about key findings, and the reason why that's important is because it will provide insights to the community engagement that we've done up to this point. And I think that's important for various reasons. We are at a point where we've created a draft strategic framework. We need you. We need you to look at it. We need you to give us feedback on it. Positive, critical, whatever it is, it's for the better and the future of Alexandria. So your insights, your perspectives are very important to us today. You are going to have to go to work. There will be a breakout session where you'll be engaged in the 3 goals, and we'll talk about that a little bit. I think at this point, I'll start and talk a little bit about TIP. TIP stands for Theory into Practice, and we basically design strategies that support a community's vision for the future. Our firm has been around for about 30 years this year. Also, the project goal, there are two parts to that. Our scope of work is to host a summit, and we're here today to engage you in a very robust way, and also develop a strategic framework and action plan to foster equitable economic development in Alexandria. Here's a snapshot of what we've done so far, and I think this is important to look at because we're not done yet. We've had over 75 roundtables. That's like a focus group, and interview attendees on a one-on-one basis in many cases. And that lists there from the public schools to business associations, the city council, civic leadership groups, community members, it goes on. But we were very intentional about having a broad base of engagement for this community. There were over 35 who attended the Countdown to the Summit events, and there was one virtual and one in person. And then over 376 people responded to the survey. It was a virtual survey. And we've had over 486 plus touch points in the community. We're not done. Like I said, this is just another part of engaging you as citizens of this community. There will be a survey after the summit. So you'll have another touch point to get engaged. And then we will be working on creating a strategic framework and also an action plan to move forward.
Great, thank you, Tracy. In the next couple of slides, what I'll do is go through a summary of what we've heard so far in our stakeholder engagement. And as Tracy mentioned, that engagement continues today and in the survey after the summit concludes. I'd like to start by hitting some of the highlights from our pre-summit survey. This is a survey that TIP sent out with help of the partnership in the city of Alexandria. The survey was open for approximately 3 weeks. Over 375 people responded. The map on the right side of your screen shows where people responded from. Those darker colors had more responses. You can see here, we got responses really from throughout the region. A couple of things to note are that 90% of the people who responded actually are residents in Alexandria, and approximately 51% of people who responded also work in Alexandria. And there's definitely a little overlap in that Venn diagram where you have people who live and work here, but I think it's important to note the people who responded are familiar with your community. And I would also note that the survey is just one of the many public engagement tools that we've used. Tracy highlighted those in the last slide. It's not a scientific survey, it's not a representative sample, but it is a tool for helping us to refine our understanding of the community and develop the strategic framework that you'll hear about later in this section. The first question that we asked was, when you think of Alexandria, what do you think about? And we asked this to help refine not only a vision statement for this effort, but also to get a better understanding of what are some of the things that people want to see continue and move forward within the community. What are some of those things that we can leverage? You can see in the middle, historic clearly was the most popular response. We also heard people thinking, Alexandria, I think of Old Town, I think of charming, I think of community, I think of home, I think of high quality of life. And it's interesting to note that a lot of these responses are all very positive. People feel really positively toward and about Alexandria. I think that's something very unique to your community and not something that we see everywhere. And the next question, we decided to look forward. So we asked, what do you think about Alexandria now? We also wanted to know, what do you think about future growth? What are you concerned about, and where do you see potential benefits? I'd like to call out a couple of things in each of these. When we look at concerns, these are things that as a team we think about. How can we mitigate these? How can we address these in our work? Here you see highlighted cost of living was the most frequently cited concern. This came up quite a bit also in our roundtables where people had mentioned being concerned about the cost of housing, the cost of living here. Federal government uncertainty, also a pretty popular response, followed by things like loss of city identity. We heard a lot about how folks want growth to also include what is good about Alexandria today. When we looked at potential benefits, asking, where do we see good things coming out of growth? broader tax base, residential tax relief, both were really popular answers. And I think it's important to note that these two are related to one another and to that long-term sustainability of your fiscal system. Folks also mentioned things like job opportunities and industry diversification, looking at ways that folks can not only live in Alexandria, but prosper professionally. The third thing I'd like to highlight here is setting priorities. We said, what do you like about Alexandria now? Where do you see opportunities in future growth? And if we were to talk about prioritizing, what would you pick? Some of the most popular answers are related to real estate. Adaptive reuse of existing buildings, that biggest phrase in the middle, was chosen quite a bit. We also heard mixed-use development as a priority. Infrastructure investments is another priority. And then a focus on business. You see things about attracting new businesses, business retention and expansion, and small business support. So we see those two as being related, but also separate items that fit into the framework we'll share later. On April 10th, we had one of our countdown to the summit events that Tracy mentioned. And we asked folks, if we have real estate development, what do you want to see in that development? What might be some of the uses you would prioritize? Entertainment came out on top. When we asked the group what did they mean by entertainment, what would that look like, we got a really wide variety of answers. People said sports facilities, indoor and outdoor. We heard performance venues, either indoor or outdoor, museums, different sorts of facilities where people can go and enjoy being somewhere with one another. Retail came in second, followed by restaurant and hotel as being popular uses that folks would want to see in future developments. To quickly summarize what we've heard so far in the stakeholder engagement, first is equitable growth. This came up in almost every conversation where folks really wanted to see whatever happens as a result of this summit and through the framework being something that benefits all of Alexandria. Real estate was second, looking at repurposing assets and creating experiences through whatever may happen through real estate development and redevelopment. The next three focus on your business community. So looking at business retention and attraction, how can we diversify the local economy? How can we support our small businesses and make sure they have access to resources? And then how can we use the talented workforce here in entrepreneurship and commercialization, really creating new and unique things here that have national impact? We heard a lot about the workforce, the desire to reskill the workforce, build resilience, especially in light of federal decision-making. We heard a lot about creative placemaking, wanting to maintain what you saw earlier, that historic nature, the community feel in Alexandria, really representing arts and culture of a specific area, not only in new developments, but in existing areas. Community engagement was really important, looking at how we can make sure the community is aware of things that are happening and having an opportunity to offer input. This is one of those events aligned with that particular piece of feedback. Resource alignment, also very important. How can we use and leverage the different organizations in Alexandria to make this future framework come to light? And then connectivity, making sure that catalyst sites and neighborhoods are linked to one another and not operating in silos. On the next couple of slides, I'll go through our data results. What you see here is the menu of data. I will not make you sit through a slide on every piece, but what I will say is we've done a very comprehensive data assessment, and this will be provided to the city in a tool called Tableau. It's a data visualization software. But what I'd like to do is highlight the 4 columns that you see here. On the left is what we call our peer assessment. This is where we compare Alexandria to the MSA, to the state, to the nation, and to other benchmark communities to see what do your demographics look like? What are those population trends? What do your employment and industry trends look like? And how does it compare to other geographies? We also look at workforce and mobility. It's always really interesting to see, where do your residents live? Where do your workers live? Where does that population migration happen? And how does it happen within occupations and industries? In that third column, we looked at real estate, land use, and redevelopment. So we took a close look at your commercial real estate, what are your vacancy rates, construction rates, looking at how that plays out both over geography as well as how you compare to the metro and to the nation. And finally, we look at your fiscal position, just seeing what tax revenue trends look like over time. And we take what we've heard from the community with these current conditions, and I'll share a couple data points on the next few slides to come up with our approach to the strategic framework. I'd like to start here on industry sectors, and what this particular graph shows and what's important for us in looking at it is what industries have the greatest number of jobs. Where are you currently strong, and how might that fit into our recommendations? Professional services leads at the top, and what that means for those who aren't familiar is looking at mostly business-to-business types of skills. So this might be architecture services, legal, accounting, et cetera, usually offered between one business and another. Second are the personal and other services. So these are services that are often person to person. Think more of like your fitness trainer, a childcare provider, the person who cuts your hair, et cetera. So these are the two greatest job categories within Alexandria, followed by obviously looking at federal government, civilian workforce, and then fourth I'd mention the accommodation and food services, which really goes to not only your tourism and hospitality industry, but also a population supporting set of jobs. In the second chart, we look at occupational employment. So the first one we saw, industry. This looks like the actual jobs within an industry. I'll note that this is net job change, so these are not absolute numbers that we saw on the last slide. So what you see here is change over time. We've taken a 5-year snapshot, and each of the colored bars relates to a particular year in time. And what we use this for is to identify, one, where do you have growing segments of occupations? Where might there have been job losses that we want to mitigate or counter against going forward? I would call out, your community and social service occupations is one that is growing, that closely aligns with some of your target sectors, and especially the presence here of your nonprofits and associations. Something looking at business and financial operations. That is a particular occupation that goes across a number of your target industries. It's something that is present in technology and cybersecurity, in a lot of the different types of businesses that you see here in Alexandria, and it's positive to see that that is increasing. I'll note the office and administrative support represents the greatest net job change of a loss. A lot of that did happen during COVID. You see 2020 and 2021 being the biggest blocks there, and it'll be an interesting trend to kind of keep an eye on over time. In the third slide here, we're looking at what we call talent gaps in your occupational employment. So these green bars show where somebody is coming into Alexandria to work. These green bars, to me, are an opportunity to say, is there a place where we can recapture some of these folks who are commuting in who may want to live in Alexandria? You can see here, food prep and serving related by far has the most number of commuters coming into your city. I would imagine that's closely tied to the affordability issues that we heard earlier. Business and financial operations coming in at second, and then sales third. We look at who commutes out of Alexandria. The important thing to note here is that these are people who live in Alexandria but have to work somewhere else. So can we then, through this process, create a job opportunity for this person or these persons to stay in Alexandria? Looking at arts, the design, entertainment, sports, and media, third from the bottom, I would throw that out as an example where if we were to invest in that entertainment priority that folks mentioned for new real estate development, some of these workers may now be able to live and work in Alexandria and not have to commute out. With that, I will pass it over to Mishka.
Thank you so much, Jen. Can you all hear me well in the back?
Yeah, but we can't see the screen as well.
Oh. Maybe. Are we able to turn the lights down a bit?
Maybe the lights up
Over here?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, for the sake of time, I'll just go ahead and get started. Hopefully we can get the screen situation worked out. But Jen did a great job of going over a lot of the quantitative and qualitative findings that we've come to so far. We took a lot of that information and really plugged that into a SWOT analysis that I'll go over with you on the following slide. But before that, I'd like to set the stage a bit, provide a framework for how we would like to think about the SWOT. I also don't want you all to get the impression that the SWOT that we are presenting to you today is an exhaustive list of everything under the sun, but the things that we kept hearing over and over again. So as we go through this next few slides, thinking about things like the strengths in Alexandria, the opportunities in Alexandria, having that be the frame for how the city is competitively positioned among other peers, among other benchmarks. So those are the things that you would consider competitive advantages, qualities, aspects, resources, things that make the city a place to be. Another piece I'd want to call out here in terms of just this diagram and how we think about a SWOT analysis when we complete them is around degree of control. So thinking of all of those aspects, right? Alexandria's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, thinking about it on a continuum in terms of what is the real degree of control here, right? So once we're moving from beyond the local level and things the city can do to shape things at a local level, but starting to think about things on a broader scale, right? Regional scale, statewide, thinking nationally, globally, there's a lot less control in terms of what the city can do. And in that case, it's a matter of just being able to respond to what is going on. So with that, I'd like to share this here. Before you all panic, I will not go over all of these, but I will just give you a sense of some of the key themes that we see in some of these major areas. So that first column there around strengths, one main thing that kept coming up, the mayor spoke about this as well in terms of quality of life and the importance of quality of life. That's something that we heard time and time again in our conversations. We saw that a lot in the survey results as well. Residents think, visitors think that Alexandria is a great place to be. Residents feel a great sense of community here. Another key theme that we find under strengths is just the proximity. So the proximity to a lot of other regional assets. It is a regional economic hub. You have very close proximity to some of the best educational institutions in the country. You have a proximity to major international airports as well. So thinking about those physical characteristics about the location of Alexandria work to its benefit. One other piece I'd like to call out here regarding strengths is around just the state of Virginia. Most of these that you see listed here are primarily things specific to the city, but I do think it is worth noting that the fact that Alexandria is in the state of Virginia, which has been voted one of the most business-friendly states across the nation, is a huge benefit to this city. In terms of weaknesses, some of this we've talked about so far. Primarily what we're hearing is the weaknesses tend to fall around things like real estate, right? So being overly reliant on residential real estate tax revenues, not necessarily having as much availability of sites and different spaces. And then the second major weakness, I'd say, is not having a diversified economic base, which we'll get more into as we focus more on opportunities and things of that sort. So major categories for opportunities lie around what the weaknesses are and solving for some of those weaknesses. So looking more closely at how to use the assets of the city and real estate to create a stronger economy, how to create better connectivity across neighborhoods, and then another major piece here would be around the talent pool, right? So I don't need to tell you all that the region is a highly educated region. I actually live in Silver Spring, Maryland. I'm locally based. I'm glad I could share that. But it is a highly educated region, and there are opportunities to be able to reskill, if needed, some of the federal workers that are located here. Threats, I think John did a great job of covering what a lot of those national threats are. I don't think we need to spend a whole bunch of time here, but one piece that I will point out is just the impact of federal funding and what that would mean for the workforce. So, getting to the fun stuff. So before we get to the strategic framework, one question we always get at TIP is, how do you come up with these plans? How do you come up with these frameworks? What informs this work that you do and this work that, these final reports that you present to us? So 3 primary things. What you tell us, so that's what we hear from roundtable discussions, one-on-one conversations, surveys, stakeholder interviews, all of that. What the data tell us, so all of that detailed economic assessments, some of which Jen went over with you. There's plenty more to that as well. And then the third thing is what our experience as a team tells us. So it actually goes beyond just the 3 of us here and John. We have an R&D team that is exceptional at what they do, and they help us with this work as well. So one thing you'll hear me say a lot is draft. So this is the draft strategic framework that we have compiled so far based on what we've heard thus far. It has 3 major components: a vision statement, guiding principles, and goal areas. So the vision statement here speaks to what the outcomes are of this framework, right? What do we want to achieve with this framework? So making sure that Alexandria is resilient, competitive, and future ready, and ensuring that it is a community where innovation thrives, opportunity is accessible to all, and economic growth enhances quality of life. The second piece here, guiding principles, we have drafted 4 so far, and I like to think of guiding principles as the economic development values of a community. So when you're thinking about decision-making, when you're thinking about tasks related to economic development, these should essentially be the filter through which you determine if you need to make a certain goal or if you need to do a particular task. So the 4 here, I'll share descriptions on what those are on following slides, and then the last piece here in the framework are 3 goal areas. So we have 12 total strategies which we've drafted so far, and each of those 12 strategies are broken down into these 3 areas. So for guiding principles, we've created descriptions for some of these, or all of these. 1, around equity, making sure that as we think about the work that the city does, ensuring that initiatives that relate to equitable and inclusive outcomes are prioritized, keeping an eye on things like resilience, ensuring that Alexandria can be a more diverse place with a more resilient tax base that's financially sustainable over time. 3rd, authenticity is honoring the city's diverse culture, its unique character, and its very unique history. We heard a lot of pride from pretty much everyone we spoke to about the things that make Alexandria unique and the need for it to continue to be a very unique and authentic place. Finally, accountability, ensuring that there is a structured decision-making process or processes, and making sure that outcomes on decisions and tasks and actions are also being shared more publicly. All right, so for our 3 goal areas, the first one here is around place-based development. So just ensuring that the spaces and places in Alexandria are places that residents, talent, visitors want to go to, ensuring that they're dynamic, they're inclusive, they're authentic, and they reflect the character of the city as well. The second piece here around business retention and recruitment is around supporting local businesses and attracting new businesses as well. to create more varied opportunities for employment citywide. And when we're thinking about goal area 2, we are thinking of those traditional businesses of all sizes. We're not just thinking about growing or attracting those larger employers, but we heard and we see that smaller businesses are just as important and should be focused on as well. The third piece around entrepreneurship and innovation is around facilitating a thriving ecosystem for local entrepreneurs that fosters innovation and provides pathways for startups to succeed. So with each of these, I'll just quickly go through the draft strategies that we've created for each of the goal areas. As I mentioned, for each goal area, we have 4. So for goal 1, around place-based development, again, this idea or this topic of real estate keeps coming up, and we made sure we included it here, but ensuring that the city can prioritize some of those catalytic real estate projects that could turn the tide for the city and evoke transformational change, right? The second strategy here is focusing on those initiatives that stay true to what makes Alexandria unique, what makes the neighborhoods unique, what contributes to its cultural identity, as well as its heritage. The third strategy is around looking at land use policies and ensuring that these policies are supportive of sustainable and innovative approaches to development. And last, ensuring that the city is positioned as a destination of choice, not just for residents and folks within the area, but regional visitors as well. So people like me from Silver Spring and even beyond. For goal 2, we've outlined 4 areas here again. So 1 is around supporting and growing existing businesses of all sizes, recruiting businesses that align with Alexandria's target industries, workforce skills, assets, and economic vision. Being able to diversify the local economy by building on the strengths that we've outlined so far, and also looking at some of those future opportunities as well. So if there are areas for additional growth, if there are things that the city already does well, how can the city continue to build on those assets? And finally, being able to strengthen the talent pipelines for existing and emerging industries. For goal area 3, entrepreneurship and innovation. 1, being able to cultivate an innovation ecosystem that connects entrepreneurs and resources and support. 2, encourage the creation of incubator and accelerator spaces that foster innovation and economic activity. 3, fostering the development of entrepreneurial skills in students as well as the workforce. And then 4, being able to celebrate and publicize what's going on in the city regarding entrepreneurial successes, as well as raising the city's profile as an innovation destination. So really quickly, those were our draft ideas now, and the thought here is, as you all go out into your breakout rooms, you'll help us to further refine where we are now. We're not saying that this is it and it's baked. It's not that at all. We want to share this as a means for the discussions that will happen in the breakout rooms. So with that, Tracy, Jen, any additional words before I turn it back to Stephanie?
Yeah, so as we wrap up here, I want to thank you all for the attention that you've given us. And also, hopefully, you're thinking about these goals and some of the strategies that we've brought forth. You'll be able to dig into those on the sessions. Also, as you're sitting here, think about what session you want to attend. Remember, it's aligned with the 3 goals. After we have the next keynote come up, we will come back to the stage and give you more details of what to expect in those breakout sessions. And I also want to remind you that I saw a lot of cameras and phones taking pictures of the slides. That's perfectly fine, but this presentation will be posted and you'll have full access to it. So thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, thank you very, very much for that. As the ladies mentioned, the 3 goal areas are going to be the concentration of our breakout groups. But the thing that is constant across all 3 of those goal areas is that none of those can happen without a place. And as we think about what Alexandria's strength is, when you think about that first panel and some of the competitive forces we're working against, and then you see where we're going to be focusing our efforts, the thing that we really want to lead with is that Alexandria is an incredible place. And so when we thought about a keynote and who could help talk to us a little bit about how important that is, we found Kevin Kelly, who is the co-founder and principal of a design and strategy firm called Shook Kelly. But probably more relevant to what we're talking about here, he wrote a book called Irreplaceable. And he's going to talk to us a little bit about his experience in designing places on behalf of corporations, but also on behalf of locations, and his experience in cities that we might consider I guess competition. Want to be careful about that. But inspiration, et cetera. So please join me in welcoming Kevin Kelly here to Alexandria and get ready to hear a little bit about place. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I want to make sure you can hear me, and I'm going to set this timer so you know what time I need to finish here. Sorry. Okay, my name's Kevin Kelly, and I'm an architect. I decided to be an architect at 6 years old, which is pretty unusual. Some people wait a long time to decide what they want to be. Some people wait till they're 40 to figure out what they want to be, but I knew at 6 years old. I had never met an architect before. I had never seen what they do. I'd never been in an office of an architect till I was in my 20s. The only reference I had of architects was Mike Brady from the Brady Bunch. Most people that become architects are really good at designing objects, and they're good at drawing. I was okay at both. I wasn't obsessed at designing objects. What I was fascinated with was behavior, which sounds very odd, but I was very interested in how spaces shape how we behave. And it started at a very early age. I was obsessively, maybe neurotically observant. I would notice where people stand, how they walk in a room, whether they're convivial and kind to each other, or whether they're antisocial or anxious. I grew up in a home that was a little bit rough, and I could tell by the way the key went in the door whether it'd be a good day or a bad day, or the way ice cubes went in a glass, whether the cops would come or not. And so I could figure out what was going to go on. And so I tried to figure out, what can I do? I'm 60 pounds. I'm 6 years old. Well, how can I do anything? I'm not big enough to do anything. And somehow or another, I knew that if I could adjust the environment, I could change people's behavior. I could turn down the lights, put on some Marvin Gaye, rearrange the furniture, maybe candles, a little food, some snacks, and the bear would go to bed. And I knew, I just started figuring it out. And so I took that same behavior and started applying it in all kinds of situations, at my friends' houses, at schools, at other places, and I really learned something fundamental at a young age, that environment affects behavior. It's a really, really key principle. And I want you to think about that because we're in environments all the time, and we don't realize how they infect us or affect us, Okay, just like food. If you eat junk food all the time, which a lot of people do in food deserts, it makes them anxious and it affects their quality of life. Well, your environments do. They're in you. We oftentimes say, I'm in an environment, but the environment is in us. So I started a firm, co-founded a firm with a business partner, an architect, a well-known master planner named Terry Shook. And we started in Charlotte, North Carolina. And then we opened a second office in Los Angeles, which I had up. And for most of my career, the behaviors that we would study are pretty universal. I could go back thousands of years or hundreds of years and look at the ancient agoras, the marketplaces, the bazaars, and I could see behaviors that were pretty standard even in the modern mall. But we started noticing some pretty radical changes around 2007, 2008, up to 2015. And that was that people stopped making eye contact. They started walking into the street, walking into water fountains. We've seen all this behavior, right? We've all walked down the street and go, hey, wake up, buddy, you're gonna run over me. We know that kind of thing. We've done it ourselves. I do it. Our family tries to talk to us sometimes. Like, wait. They're putting scores here. So this has affected us, and we think we can manage this, but we really can't because it's pushing really primal buttons in us, doorbell buttons in us that perk us up. And so we started noticing that behavioral change, and then we said, wow, this is a game changer for us. And that doesn't make technology the enemy. It just makes it a new factor, like climate's a factor, or economics is a factor. But there are some things to really think about, about where are we at and where's our world at, okay? And how does place relate to everything? Now, if you and I were to go to dinner and talk, I would tell you that most of our problems in society are place-based problems, that most of the solutions we need start with physical places. I believe that, and we'll have to have a dinner about that. That's where it starts. The home you're in, the neighborhood you're in, the community you're in. Because all of us keep trying to solve international problems. We can't solve international problems. We have to solve local problems on our street, on our block. That's how you make a difference in your life and other people's lives. But if I believe the headlines, and I want to be clear, I'm not telling you these are the only headlines, but let's just start. This came out in The Week magazine in just March, and this was young people really talking about it. They go, where do you go if you're not at school, work, or home? For some, the answer is nowhere. That's literally what a lot of young people are saying. What we'd call the third place. And the third place has been interrupted by binge watching and distracting and all kind of other factors, economics. The dearth of these kind of third places or these common shared places is increasing loneliness. And we've heard all about the epidemic, and we can debate whether it's true or not. There's undoubtedly people that are feeling disconnected. That's one of the biggest anxieties we have. We walk around incredibly fearful, yet we're craving to be connected. We're fearful of the other because we've been losing contact with it. And the pandemic certainly didn't help. They disrupted things and we haven't snapped back, and on many levels. But the youth are the ones really getting penalized. They're spending upwards 8 to 12 hours a day in front of a screen, okay? And that is significant. We're only awake a certain number of hours, right? Outside of school and work, and we're spending an incredible amount of time alone together in some strange way, right? We're talking to thousands of people alone in our living room, doom scrolling. So, there's a lot of predictions out there. NASDAQ says that by 2040, 95% of retail purchases will be made online. And to be honest, I'm not here to go, well, that's a crime and we need to fix it. I've lived my life, and I'm okay. Whatever happens for you right now, I'm going to go on out. I'm okay. But I do look at my young daughter, who's 7 years old, and go, what kind of world is she coming into? And something happens to us on the way to the market, right? Whenever we had to go to the market with our grandmother, our parents, we had to dress up. We had to behave. We had to socially interact with people we hate, right? Do you remember your mother squeeze you and go, oh my God, here comes Miss So-and-so. And we have to deal with it. Those were developing skills. That's how you develop skills. That's how you became present to your public. One of the number one ways we learn how to be isn't by reading books, isn't about getting educated, it's by watching other people. That's how we are as human beings. We're anthropological, and the way we learn how to be in public is by watching other people. You're like, oh, that's how you go on a date. Oh, that's how you become a parent. That's how you become a grandparent. But we're losing our ability because we're not going to the butcher. We're not combing our hair or brushing our teeth. We're laying in bed or in our pajamas, doom scrolling and binge watching at the same time and waiting for somebody to drop food off at our door. If you do that day in and day out, you are going to lose your chops. The ability to socialize is a skill that you learn. It's not a skill you're born with. In fact, we're narcissistic, self-obsessed individuals, right? And all of us had babies and kids, right? And we had to go, hey, listen, you got to share, okay? These are hard things for us to learn. And if we're learning how to behave on Twitter, then we're really in trouble, okay? So we see this, or on airplanes, right? People can't even fly anymore together. So up to 87% of large shopping malls are predicted to close over the next decade, according to Capital One. Whether that's true or not is debatable. I don't actually agree with that. On many levels, I'm doing lots of projects where they're thriving, but there certainly is a change. And you might go, well, is that a big loss? Well, these occasions to go out were the reasons we met with other people. Retail isn't always the product, it's the socialization that is the product that happens around the device of buying other objects. 24% of Americans say they're going to restaurants less and less, and they're not going to go anymore. 29% are just going out less, right? And again, some of us go, that's great, we're not gonna waste any more money. You know, we're gonna sit at home with ourselves and call the cops if anybody walks down our street because we don't know them. These are dangerous things for us. We're not getting out and socializing. More office spaces, you know, we had a really good discussion there, and I work with a lot of downtowns and urban districts, but it's still an issue. And there are pockets that are doing well. I'm certainly working in other areas, and I work globally, and some places are still doing okay. They haven't been hit yet, but there's more office space sitting on the United States than we've ever had, and that is going to change the tax base and our habits, our fundamental ways of achieving. What I'm worried about is we actually might get what we want, which is a frictionless life. Okay, where we can sit in a lazy boy, like that movie WALL-E, remember, and just have everything done. The only danger in WALL-E, if you remember, they were so inert that their bone density went down and they couldn't walk. They couldn't grab things because they weren't getting out. There are correlations with obesity and diabetes and other things because we're not getting out as much. 43% of American cities will be depopulated by the turn of the century, according to Nature Cities. There's many other studies out there that go back and forth, and certain cities are doing great, but let's just admit, certain cities are struggling, okay? And these are real issues that don't just affect real estate, they don't just affect architecture, they affect the way we behave as a society and how we come together. Now, this guy predicted it all. We heard him, somebody was mentioning it earlier today before I came here, Mark Anderson. He said that, you know, software eats the world. Or he said it eats retail, it eats everything. He, by the way, was in the paper today in a very fascinating article where he's talking about AI, and he said AI will replace everything. He said it will replace everything except, and honest to goodness, he said that's my job. Not my job, his job. He said, now my job won't be replaced, actually. So he is the gatekeeper. He and a couple other tech bros are going to decide how the rest of us are going to live. These are dangerous statements, okay, to think about. Who are the gatekeepers for how we live? Okay, he also said AI is funnier than comedians. I don't think so. That picture is funnier than comedians. So I'm going to talk to you about, back up here, I really was at a crossroad in my life, a decision that I needed to make about, do I care? Do I just coast on out and move on out? I got enough work, I'll be okay, or do I say something? And the reason I wanted to say something isn't because I'm worried about architecture or developers or even cities, to be honest. I'm worried about civilization. And when I had to think about what to call this book, and I had some really compelling titles that I could wish I had time to talk to you about, but really what I was interested in are what are the things in our life that are irreplaceable? What are the moments in life? Like most of you would remember where you got married, or where you got engaged, or where you went on your first date. These are things you won't forget because they left an indelible imprint on you, okay? We're losing sadly, a lot of kids who are doing education online don't have those memories of being in a place. And what happens to us, by the way you remember, the way your brain is hardwired, is we remember where we were when something happened. Deja vu is actually we remember the smell of what we smelled and where we were. But when you don't have a place with a memory, your memories become undifferentiated. And it's just how we're wired as human beings. We're wired as environmental species. We don't have eyes in the back of our head. We don't walk backwards. Everything was designed for the human body to understand its environment. And it looks for two things: enhancements and impediments to life. It looks for things that are good for us and things that are bad for us. Well, what happens when we warp all that? What happens when we change all that? This book really focuses on that. It really tries to understand what is a prescription of how places can survive. It is not an attack on technology. Technology is coming. You can't stop it. It's always been around, and there always have been technologies. I'm fine with that. I just want you to save some place, some room in your life for places, particularly for your younger generations. So I'm going to talk to you about a couple of principles. There's 21 principles in the book. I'm going to show you 3, okay? And I'm going to use not cities. I'm going to try to use common places you come in contact with. Our firm has 7 different practice areas. We work on a variety of different scales, big, large use, million-square-foot projects, all the way down to 1,000-square-foot projects. But I'm going to show you just some basic places. The first principle, as I talked to you about, is environment affects behavior. It doesn't only affect behavior, it affects perception and decision-making. So as I toured Alexandria today, which I love and is absolutely gorgeous, I have envy of the place, I was certainly looking around at the environment and what does it say to me? What's my perception? Perception is reality, by the way, but what does that mean to me? I'm going to start with the ugliest project I ever did. I didn't do this one. Somebody did an uglier project to me. It's the first project I did the first year of my business, okay? I work for Golden Corral, which is a 538-unit steakhouse chain, okay? It's an all-you-can-eat buffet. So a herd of buffalo come in between about 11 to 1:30. They do a stampede. They destroy it. If you're an employee, you get run over, you're in trouble, okay? And then there's another stampede in the evening. Now, a lot of my architect friends ribbed at me. They're like, you know, they'd be like, what are you working on? He said, I'm working on a skyrise. And the other guys, what are you working on? I'm doing a penthouse overlooking Manhattan Beach. And I'm doing a cliffside Malibu house. And they go, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm working on a steak buffet chain for people on fixed incomes. Most of the people who eat here don't have the money. And really what it did, it taught me to be empathetic. What is my job as an architect? To make the wealthy and cultural elite cooler? No, my job is to shape behavior and make everybody's day extraordinary, to make everybody's life. You know, doctors, if all they wanted to do was work on rich people and do plastic surgery, we'd be in trouble. To some degree, we've kind of hit that. But we need them to work on everyone, the poor kids, the middle-class families, and the wealthy. Well, we need a lot of architects, a lot of the best minds working on a buffet to make that person's life better, or a dry cleaner, or a grocery store, or a convenience store, because these are people that have to use those places. Those people will more than likely go to a museum once every 2 years, but they will go to a gas station once a week. We should make these places better, and you can really see the ramifications of this in our corridors that line up to the cities and the suburbs. So when I was working on this, what I tried to figure out is, what's the thinking? Why do you make it like a prison? And they make it like a prison because the stampede. And they want people to carve their name in the furniture. They want Clorox to not be able to destroy the floor. Everything designed around this is around hazard proof and lawsuit proof. But a typical Golden Corral would do $38,000 to $42,000 a week. I can't change the product. I can't change the food. I can't change the price. I can't even really change the service. All I can change is the environment. So we take a store like that, it's the same store. Again, we're not changing the product, price, or anything. We build several of these, 5 at first batch, and we double sales. Double sales just by changing the environment. Now, why am I showing you this? I'm not trying to sell you on buffets. I'm trying to tell you, this is the impact that environment has on your behavior. Now, when I met with the owner, who was the president of the National Restaurant Association, I said, what do you think? I thought he'd be so proud. I thought he'd give me a bonus because I just doubled his sales. And he said, be quiet. And I'm like, oh, okay, what? He goes, I want you to listen. And I said, I don't hear anything. He goes, that's what I want you to see. They treat us better. He said, before, nobody cared. People were just rude and they would destroy our furniture. Now they take care of it. Now there's 100 different little studies in here I could tell you, but this is all psychology. It's just the psychology of finding realms. This is kind of a mom's kitchen, a roadside produce stand, a country store. Just by cueing and triggering this, you will change behaviors. And this works at any scale. Similar story. $5.5 billion convenience store chain gets people in. All we have to do is just observe and try to understand. So people pull into a gas station, a convenience store, they're coming in around 60 miles an hour, and they have about 4 feet to stop. The music's blaring, and they're on the cell phone. It's like, boom. And they get in there, and they do this thing that's the funniest thing. They walk in, and you can see them on videotape, and they go, why the hell am I here? And you're like, you can see them like, oh, I need cigarettes or Coke, or I need this. They get it, and then they forget that there's Dunkin' Donuts there, and they literally go get in a car, and they drive down the road to a Dunkin' Donuts. And we're like chasing them down. I go, hey, dude, bro, why do you get the Dunkin' Donuts there? He goes, oh, they don't sell Dunkin' Donuts. We're like, they sell Dunkin' Donuts. What happens? Their mind is somewhere else, so fixated that our job is to divide their intentions, to change their mind, to get them engaged. That's our job in general in running as cities, is we have to divide people's intentions. If people want to speed through your community at 100 miles an hour, you need to divide their intentions. Not police them, because that doesn't work. You need to entice them. So we take that kind of situation, which is visual chaos and visual overwhelmment, and we can double sales. You can see we go up to 86% in selling drinks. We increase customer counts. We increase gallons of gas just by changing the environment. Again, not the product price. I'm going to show you just boring, mundane, everyday projects, okay? Because this is the point. We're not talking skyscrapers or museums here. Is we can take a cookie and cracker. I know all of these projects are going to get me put in jail forever, but we can take cookie and crackers, which had a negative 45% decline in sales because of trans fatty acids, which most consumers didn't know what it was. And the company took it all out, but they couldn't change the behavior. They made the products great, but they couldn't get people down. If you can't get traffic, you definitely can't get sales. So we take that kind of environment and we just change it. We go back and go, okay, what is the realm? And you might think this is manipulative. This is helping people enjoy their shopping experience. When they go to this place, their dwell times increase, their experimentation increase, literally their smiles increase. We'll study and we'll look at it, like, wow, they're having a better time. And if you have to go shopping, isn't it better to have a better time? So again, I could go into all the details and all the scruples about this, because I don't drink Coke, I don't smoke cigarettes, I don't even eat cookies. So going into where is the line, that's another discussion for another day. The point I want you to get is that environment affects behavior. The second thing that really happens in life is that bonfire moments attract and convene people. And what is a bonfire moment? When I was a kid, I grew up in the Loxahatchee swamps in South Florida, which is a crazy exotic place to be in. Not the Florida you normally think of Miami and suntan lotion and bodies. I'm talking alligators and mosquitoes and water moccasins and water everywhere, just up to your knees in water, okay? We had airboats and swamp buggies to survive. And what did we do on weekends? Every weekend, without any kind of organizational schedule, there wasn't any official club, we all knew to go out to what we called the mud flats, which were 2 miles out into the middle of Everglades swamp. We had to build a Mad Max vehicle to get out there, okay, to some redneck riviera. It was a big, big mound of sand that opened up. And what was fascinating to me as a teen is that a self-organizing group of rednecks who all normally beat each other up because they're so bored would actually build a bonfire together. And then they'd convene around that bonfire and sing Old Milwaukee and songs that doesn't get any better than this, and Leonard Skinner. And I was like, what's happening here? Why is this doing this? And what I learned was really something that you see everywhere. There's bonfire moments everywhere. If you go to Coachella or you go to all these different events, they're like seances, and people look at these events, they go, well, those are hooligans. No, these are doctors and lawyers and judges, okay, literally going to these events, going through great expense to have a primal cathartic experience of being around other people, because it's actually becoming even rare. Coachella just happened, okay? And when you look at Coachella, it's unbelievable. People are spending $102 for that little plate of tacos, okay? Waiting in a really long line, 5 to 12 hours of traffic to use a porta-john. For what? Socialization. That's the product. That's the thing that we're losing. They're dressing up. It's a whole kind of thing. And I'm exaggerating here because this happens on a mundane level as well. And the work we do with Harley Davidson, it's fascinating. When after I did all the studies and my team and I spent everything, I came back to him and I said, so let me understand this. You want me to sell the fattest, most expensive, hardest to finance motorcycle on the market that doesn't win on anything, drag strips or corners or anything? They're like, no, it doesn't. I'm like, what's the product? And they're like, well, that's what you're here to help. And I'm like, I think it's to sell the end of loneliness for midlife crisis males fading in strength. Now, that was a joke, but it actually worked. And we started going, that's actually really right on. Let's stop selling the bike and sell the community. Let's put the community on the pedestal. Because you can go to a Harley event and you can see Hell's Angel riders and holy rollers that couldn't have more different viewpoints. But when they go to that event, they're united. In fact, if you buy a Harley, you will end loneliness. And I'm not kidding. You will have thousands, if not millions of fans. You can be anywhere. You can be in Thailand or the Philippines or Spain or even Japan. And you're connected. Now, you're connecting it around an ethos. And that's important. It's what we call meaning, a field of meaning. And that meaning is freedom, rebellion, and sticking it to the man. And that has a lot of power in this brand. Just as Whole Foods has a different ethos. Just as other brands have a different ethos. These bonfires are everywhere, though. You can go to Rockefeller Center on any given night of the week, any given year, and there's a bonfire moment happening where strangers who ordinarily would be afraid of each other connect and unite around something powerful. We do a lot of these in the mixed-use development projects we do. My business partner is pretty famous in developing these large-scale mixed-use development projects that have retail on the ground floor, residential above, sub-civic element. And these are true communities where people are bonding, where they're coming together. We work with a lot of urban districts, so that's 3rd Street Promenade in Santa Monica. There's several other ones, Hollywood Media District, and some others we could talk about. Let me jump over this. Carl Jung called all of this power of when strangers come together, participation mystique. And he said, there's something that happens when people come together if they have a device, if they have an inanimate object. They need something. You can't just say, hey, we want to get everybody together in a field. It doesn't work. It's got to have something. It's got to have a statue. It's got to have some kind of thing that pulls people around. The bonfire is that magical kind of element. Now, the most important person's job and really building the bonfire, and it happens in organizations, it happens in cities, is the bonfire master. That is the person that tends to the flame, that says, how do we maintain this flame? What is it? And the flames can get too big, by the way. Brands and cities can get overwhelming and chase everybody away. When I was in the mud flats, if there was some jerk that threw gasoline on the fire, it would scare everybody. Party's over, cops are coming, get out. But if you know how to manage that and don't let it die, you can keep people. We oftentimes call this a chief experience officer, chief brand officer, but unfortunately that gets too spreadsheet driven. What we need to do is think about what is it that convenes people? What brings people together and makes them feel pro-social? That is, they want to talk to others and be around others. That's the quality we're looking for. Objects don't do that, by the way. Objects don't really do that in the way we're talking about. It's really about the fostering community and fostering connection. The third principle I'll talk to you about is that the payoff of place must exceed the perceived effort. And what I mean by that is, in the past, you could be a retailer, you could be a city, you could be other places and succeed without actually having to worry about how much work people had to do to drive to get there. But now it's a factor. It's a big factor. How much energy am I going to have to expend to do that as people are laying on the couch looking at the new season of whatever on Netflix going, I don't know if I want to get up. They got one sock on. They're like, I don't think I got it in me. My father, whenever he wants to go anywhere, my mom's trying to get him dressed up because she wants to go out. My father's first question out of his mouth is, how's the parking? If she goes, well, there's a parking deck. Well, it's over. I'm not going. I'm not dealing with parking. Or he's not even going to pay a valet, not even $1. Okay, so this question of how much work, and you have to divide every aspect of your city, your district, your venue, and work. So I work with a lot of companies like this. This is a $1 billion mall in a city where they did an unbelievable job fitting out the tops of these buildings and finding the best tenants. But it didn't hit the projections they wanted. Okay, it's a beautiful mall, but when the leaders, the entire board flew from all around the world to come to the office and go, where did we miss? How did we fail? What are we doing? And I'm like, well, you didn't start with this. You make people go underground into a disoriented parking lot where you're guaranteed, I don't care if you put a tracker on your phone, you will not find your car. It's impossible. And they're like, yeah, we knew that. Our data was showing that, and we meant to get to it, value engineered it out. Well, that is a work obstacle that impedes the payoff. obstacle. And you have to start with this first, but we generally don't do this because nobody's really doing an analysis of how much work does it take to do something. Literally this morning I got up and I went to Starbucks. How much work? It was okay, by the way. I enjoyed it. I had a beautiful time in Alexandria walking around, much better than a lot of cities. Your big test is, what's it like to walk 4 blocks in your city or New York versus another city? There are certain cities that I have offices in and other places. If I asked my clients to walk 8 blocks, they would never talk to me again. But if I'm in New York, which we had an office in Union Square, I could ask them to walk 20 blocks and be like, that was great, let's do that again. Why? Because it's entertaining and engaging. This is a terrible parking deck. This is another mall, $600 million mall, museum, aesthetic museum, because we think people relate to aesthetics, but they make you go through this parking deck. Those little film reels, by the way, are a location company that uses, and their description for their location shooters, if you're looking for a dystopic, futuristic place that is soulless, humanless, and where people die, come right here. We actually have this, even these stairs that just say, you're gonna work a lot. You're gonna go through so much work to get up here. Get ready, you're gonna be tired. We have to change this. I can't tell you that this is another global city I work with in Asia that has hired all American architects and British architects, spent over $1 billion doing the high rise, and they're like, what's wrong with our city? We've done this. I'm like, this is what's wrong with your city. You make people walk through this in heels. This is what, our most sensitive part of our body is our feet. This is a developer that understands every step of the way. That's the Grove in Los Angeles. More people visit it than visit the Great Wall of China or Disneyland. 90 million people come to this place. They're not there to go to a Gap or Banana Republic. They're there for what we call a temporary community. I'll admit it, it's temporary. They come and they wave, they're really nice to each other, they socialize, they meander, they mill. And they get in their SUVs and they drive out of the parking lot and they shoot each other birds because the environment changes. But in this environment, there's this incredible sense of community. I'm going to jump over these because I'm way over. So how do you build a bonfire? How do you do it? 3 variables: solutions, meaning, and experience. We are a solution-seeking species. We get up every day looking for small, medium, and large problems to solve. Small problem might be I need some caffeine. Medium problem might be I need to watch my cholesterol. Large problem might be, what do I do with my mother-in-law? She wants to live here. Those are the issues. Or how do I solve the end of loneliness? Or how do I find a new partner? But you got to be very clear. The literal problems are the easiest problems to solve. It's the intangible ones that are the hardest. The second field that everybody avoids is meaning. But you've got to have a field of meaning. That is, you need to be about, in the Harley Davidson, freedom, rebellion, or sticking it to man, or in Whole Foods, initially, you need to, not where they're at now, but you need to be about Mother Earth knows better than Monsanto. Okay? Each brand has a meaning if you really cultivate it. The last thing you want to do is be about experience. It's good to do it, but you want your experience to manifest what is your solution, what is your meaning. You have that in Alexandria. You have this incredible meaning, and you need to get clear about what your solution is and then make the experience manifest that. You might say, as opposed to what? Designing a beautiful object that has no connection to what your value proposition is or what your meaning is. So I'm going to use a standard grocery store, and I am going to fly through these. This is a grocery store chain that has over 100 units. They represent kind of middle America. They're in Illinois. They're being surrounded by international grocery store chains and retail giants, which are 3, and tech disruptors, and many predict they won't be in business anymore. I face this every day, where I worry about these kind of American dream people that went and started these 3rd-generation brands that are trying to survive. And they can't win on price, they can't win on variety, they can't win on convenience. So they're really stuck. Now, they tried to sell food, and you see that Connie's, they say, well, we tried to sell food, it doesn't work. I'm like, that food doesn't work, but food works. The perception of that, the feeling of that doesn't make your stomach, delicious. Now, the owner, I had never seen him smile. I didn't know he had teeth until he took me out to his ranch. And I asked him to, because I'm trying to find something, to find a field of meaning. When I took him out to the ranch, he loved talking about ranching and farming and what makes a good side of beef and what the cow has to eat to make that beef taste great. And this is the common thing that we do over and over. We look for anomalies. We look for eccentric elements. And the eccentric thing I heard him talk about was alfalfa sprouts and some other things. And I was like, Rich, why don't you bring the ranch to the grocery store? And this is a common answer. We couldn't do that. You can do that. Bring the ranch to the restaurant. Now, I very rarely recommend that you start a new brand because it takes so much time and energy. But in this case, we looked at a field of meaning that I'm not going to go into now. But these aren't just random flavor board images. These are deep-seated psychological images about God made a farmer. There's a farmer in all of us. Footloose. The idea that why do the liberals in California, where I'm from, Whole Foods in Berkeley, get to decide what to eat? We want our own value proposition around our lifestyle, our Friday night lights kind of way of living. We drill into that, and we're like, we're going to build you a brand around that. So we named it Harvest Market. We built this store. Now, he was a brand that at one point people didn't think would make it. He became the #1 grocery store in the United States, picked by his own organization. New York City, Hudson Yards, when they're building, they came to him and said, we want you to come to New York City. Now, it's really powerful. We told him not to, and thank gosh. It was hard, but we said go to many other third-tier cities. Don't go to the metro yet. Go to other ones. Now, if you go to the store, as I said, they're not winning on price, variety, convenience. They're winning on the idea of small family farms are important, and you can taste the farm difference inside these stores. And every job, and I'd challenge you to do it, in every project we do, we have an idea called the seemingly impossible. What's the one thing that you shouldn't do, but if you did do it, it'd change the way everybody thinks? In this situation, we told them, if you churned your own butter, if you made butter in your store, and you made butter logs, sour cream, chives, cinnamon, but if you made butter in a store, which sounds easier than it is, but we churn our own butter in the store, and it's a huge hit. It is a place people hang out with, by the way. It's not a chore to go there. It's actually where all the kids are going and hanging out. We have food bars and wine bars and all kind of exciting things. This is the butter churning station in the middle of the store. Again, I want you to be clear, they're not winning on commodity. They're not winning on convenience. They're winning on this idea of a field of meaning that connects. We sell general merchandise products, which are very hard to do in grocery stores. The brand has an ethos that's expressed in all the products. It has a food philosophy, which a lot of times when I tell retailers and grocery stores and restaurants, you need a philosophy, they're like, philosophy, what is that? And I'm like, you need a point of view. You need to say what you're about and what you're not about. And you need to challenge your customer to actually believe in that. Cities and urban districts have to do the same thing. You need to say, what are your brand felonies? What are the things that you go, we are not about that? It's easier to decide who you're not than who you are. This is a similar grocery store chain in Alberta, Canada. Same type of story, and third generation, did great. They won all kind of, Canadian awards 30, 40, 50 years ago. But then they started really dealing with international brands and really struggled. They kind of have a sea of chaos. And by the way, I look at an aisle like that, it is no different than when I look at a street. When I look at an alley in your city or I look at a boulevard, it's the same thinking that goes on. Is either your place has visual harmony or visual chaos. Vistas are really a key. So this is just kind of visual chaos. In this moment, Frank Loveson, who's the founder of the chain, he passed away recently. He is in his 90s in this photo, and he's an amazing man. But in that moment, he's trying to explain to me, when I said, why are locks next to chicken? He's like, well, you're going down to get chicken. You look at me and go, damn, I need a lock. And I was like, yeah, that's one way to look at it. And he said the same with picture frames, that you're eating your steak and you're looking across, you're like, we need some pictures in our living room. And I thought, yeah. And so the challenge we started looking at is, I'm like, how am I going to help this guy win? He's not going to win on price. He's not going to win on variety. He's not going to win on convenience. What am I going to do? And they tried all these words. And by the way, words don't mean anything. Okay, so they tried things like, we put family heritage. We're about heritage, right? Heritage doesn't mean something. Something I learned in the South a long time ago. If I can't touch it, it ain't real. So I got to touch family. I got to touch heritage. So don't give me words. Don't give me marketing speak. Because consumers are wizened up and they know that some manipulator is trying to coax them into something with words. Prove it to me. Show it to me. So this was their break room. They said, no, well, I call it a break room. That's their cafe. And it turned into their break room where employees carved their names in the furniture. But I was like, no, you got to give the customer the best view, the best exciting thing. So when I'm lost, and I would do the same with you if I was working with you, when I can't find something you're going to win on that's indelible, I go, hey, can I come to your house? Can I come to your house for dinner? And that's what I asked Frank Loveson. I said, I'm stuck here. Can I come have dinner at your house? He said, yeah, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I'm going to snoop and I'm going to spy like a bandit here. And all I did was look around at his house and I saw this picture on the wall. And I said, what's that? And he goes, well, I was a butcher. I was like, you're a butcher? What do you mean? He goes, well, in my 20s, I was a butcher. He goes, but I was a real butcher. And I said, as opposed to what? And he goes, there aren't real butchers anymore. I'm like, what do you mean aren't real butchers? I see the guys at the grocery store. He goes, that's an outfit. They're wearing a costume. It's all boxed beef. It comes in. They just do a little show to cut it, but they're not real butchers. That's when we saw that anomaly. We're like, what is it? It's the lost art of butchery. So you'll see that idea. Then I went in his kitchen, and his wife was making apple strudel with newspaper underneath. And I thought, oh my gosh, is that newspaper print touching the apple we're going to eat? And she explained to me that the strudel, the dough has to be so thin you can read the newspaper underneath it. And she told me there's beautiful values. They took me into their home and showed me a root cellar because of hard winters in Alberta. And I thought, wow, that's a powerful idea. So we built a whole store around that. Same thing. They became the coolest grocery store in Canada. Literally, by their own statistics, they won gold awards in the city by featuring their values, by revealing something they care about. And so this is the root cellar in the store. It's not a real root cellar, but it's tapping into the belief system. This is the smokehouse and the beef program. We got them to stop selling American beef and now make their own beef, real Alberta beef. We created a smokehouse inside there that just waves smoke all through the venue. So again, I'm going to jump over these and take you to the next one. There are a lot of great stories in this, but we've built several of them now. So we're now expanding way beyond their current territory into a whole new territory. Probably one of the more exciting brands that we've worked with recently is a Mexican brand called Northgate Markets in Costa Mesa, California. And it's the same kind of classic story that you hear all the time. An immigrant came over the border legally many generations ago, and he bought an old liquor store for nothing called Northgate, and he built it into a family business. He got all his kids involved, and they built 40 stores eventually, 40 grocery stores. This is the state of the grocery store. That's the second son, second generation, Miguel, who's in his 70s. They have a third generation. Okay, but even in California, they recognize that a lot of people have assumptions about Mexican food that aren't correct, a lot of stereotypes. And they knew something was up, but they weren't sure that when they bring us, and this is common, they go, we're doing well, but we'd like to do better, but we don't know what doing better is exactly. And the question I had to them was, why are you professionalizing your store so much? I said, professionalizing, that's what we've been working on. We've been becoming more, and I'm like, all you're doing is looking like every other grocery store chain. What you need to be is more eccentric and more strange. Now, we had to find an anomaly, and the anomaly of listening to them was around this idea of real, authentic Mexican food. Because when you talk to them personally, they talk about where the best limes come from, where the avocados are, about 6 different varieties. They talk about real, authentic food. They have homes down in Mexico City. And that's when it clicked for us. Like, what if we built a pipeline from Mexico to here, and you brought real authentic food, and you stop becoming Anglo, you actually become more Mexican, you become triple Mexican. Just like if you go to a Thai restaurant or Japanese restaurant, the more authentic it is, the better. Now this was a risk, but one of the things they have down in Mexico are mercados, these open air markets. We said, what if we build you a mercado? Now I'm gonna save you some time. This store, out of their 40 stores, this one does 600% more sales, 600% more sales a week. I want to tell you the number, but I can't, but it is shocking, nationally shocking. Probably the best result in the United States. This is the store inside. It has these real puestas, and inside is a story of every type of food. It's not done with one look. It actually has every bit of independent stalls all the way around. It has a tequila bar, a restaurant. It is absolutely fascinating to see. One of a kind. Now we're building many more of these venues. We have to keep security at the door to hold people back because so many people are coming into it. Most people go to the grocery store once every 10 days. People are coming to the store 2 times a day, oftentimes several times a week, for breakfast, lunch, dinner, to hang out, and all for different reasons. Back up here. It's put them on the map internationally, so they're winning all their own industry awards. They've been featured in the New York Times, which is really big for them to be a West Coast chain and get the acknowledgement. You can go online and look at this. It's a phenomenon that is bridging together audiences that actually felt marginalized and weren't able to celebrate their food preferences and their culture in this current era, but now they're introducing a whole larger audience of people to what their food is about. Wow, I can't believe I got as far as I did. All right, so we've been talking about retail and grocery stores because they're common places we all go to, but let's talk about urban districts or global cities. In Charlotte, North Carolina, where I'm from, we couldn't afford to be downtown when we started our firm, and we couldn't afford to be out in the suburbs. So a developer and I, a guy that was a self-admitted, quote, slumlord, he and I sat down and said, why don't we come up with a brand? And we were debating what to call it. We flew out to Dallas, Texas, and saw a place there called West End. And we were intrigued with it. We're like, wow, that's pretty neat what they've done in the 1990s to kind of turn around an urban blighted area. We thought, why don't we do that? So on the plane home, we were going to call it South IND, like industrial, because it was an industrial area. But we chickened out, and we decided to call it South End with END that I'll show you in a minute. The city called it the South Boulevard Corridor. I always hated that word corridor, because a corridor is not a place you want to be, right? A corridor is a space you go to get somewhere else. But I was always shocked at how cities describe every neighborhood in the world. Yeah, that's a corridor to get to the suburbs. I'm like, what about the people that are in the corridor? No. You got to get out to the suburbs or to downtown, right? No, these corridors have latent capitalism. They have so much potential, but we just keep destroying them with the roads. We keep building the roads wider and wider. We think about their neighborhoods like they're pipes. And they're not pipes. These are people's communities. We shorten their sidewalk, we get rid of things. And then what's even shocking, as the people drive from their downtown cushy bank jobs to the suburbs, they go, why do these people take care of their place? Like, they can't take care of it because we're destroying them with these roads. They're not pipes, they're neighborhoods. And this pattern is all over the United States. So Charlotte in 1994, I started in 1992, but in 1994 is when we really got underway. People didn't know. They generally said, I'm from Charlotte, and they said, oh, that's Charlottesville, Virginia. I'm like, nope, it's Charlotte, North Carolina. But Charlotte's done a real good job of turning itself around. Downtown is certainly where it all was, but this was the state of the area. Brownfield initiatives, we couldn't do anything because state, local, and federal policy prevented us from being able to do anything. Doing a business improvement district was illegal in North Carolina outside of the downtown, so we couldn't do anything with that. So we're like, okay, what do we do? And by the way, our working budget from bake sales every year was $20,000 a year. That's if I begged and borrowed every bit of money I could to say, how do we turn this area around? We had an old rail corridor that divided our neighborhood. And the thing I'd tell you is geography is what divides people. Roads, highways, bridges, valleys, rivers, these things divide people or bring them together. This divided our community. On one side was an African-American community, and on the right side was kind of a democratic liberal community, and nobody wanted to go on the tracks except for the drug dealers and the prostitutes and wild animals that we couldn't figure out how we're getting there. But nobody wanted to go on those tracks. It just divided, like literally like a West Side Story. So in our firm, we go, what would turn that around? And we joke, we're like, well, if there's an 18-hole golf course, that would change it. Like, if there was a river, that would change it. But the idea you would sell condos overlooking a rail corridor was impossible. The city wanted to run busways down it. We said, if you run busways down that, you'll just worsen it, because nobody's going to buy a condo overlooking a busway. So we wanted to do a trolley, which I'll show you in a minute, but we developed a brand vision, which I won't get into now, but a very elaborate, detailed thing about being honest about what are the weaknesses of the community and what could get people motivated. We then touch the land. So one of the principles that you'll read in the book, that people will revere a place as much as you revere it. That is, if you don't care about a corner, if you don't care about a sidewalk, then people aren't going to care about it. But if you say, no, this is sacred ground. This ground is important. It means a lot. Billy Graham got married here. That's what happened in Charlotte. He got married at a church that couldn't even build its steeple. It didn't have enough money. Tell that story. We went through every story, even mythologies, and told that story. And with no money, we put our name in the ground so your feet feel it. This is important. People will revere your place as much as you revere. They will revere it when you tell them there's an entrance, what we call threshold experience, and when you've left the district, when there are borders and boundaries. We took old buildings like this, which was an old warehouse, and we turned it into a brewery, which at the time became one of the top 10 restaurants in the United States. We begged that restaurant to name themselves South End so we could have a beacon, because it's important to have beacons in your community. We took old, nondescript 1960s, 50s warehouses and put new facades on them. Just literally kept them the same. We took a space and dedicated it, a pipe shed, and called it the powerhouse. And the powerhouse was where the community could come together and kind of have their revolts and talk about issues. And we talked about, with all the best thinkers we could, about the mundane things, parking, highways, all the density issues, residential concerns, and we brought people out. We didn't think anybody show up. We'd have sellout crowds over and over to this event. We then built, sorry for that, it does that. We then built a series of vision documents. This thing is really fast. This is all artificial. It's all artificial. It doesn't exist, or didn't exist at the time. But we went to the city and we said, if you'll give us $125 million, if you'll give us $20 million, we'll give you $125 million economic development back. We're over $1.5 billion now. It's actually doing better than downtown Charlotte, better than the suburbs. Okay, it is, the statistics, the office rates are amazing. So this is the trolley line, which was just an interim step. We knew that that would be a partial step, and eventually we wanted light rail. Charlotte was a third-tier city with one of the best light rail systems in the United States for a third-tier city. And now people do buy $1 million condos overlooking a trolley line, a light rail. It is really a pretty good little engine that could story. This is the district and all the development that's happened. Again, I'll remind you, just from a compelling vision that would get people to fight for something. And we had to fight a lot of entities to get what we wanted out of this. It did start a lot with identity, identifying what people wanted and what they cared about. We believed in one central idea, is that people want to leave their mark in a city, and we gave them ways to leave their mark. They couldn't leave it in downtown because it was all tied up with the uppity-ups. And we couldn't do it out in the suburbs because nobody really even comes together that way. But we could here, and we told everybody who had a slight interest in our community, if you get involved, you can leave your mark here. Literally leave your mark, and also really metaphorically leave your mark. I appreciate you letting me talk so fast and so quick. There's a lot of other studies. I hope you'll buy the book, and I hope I get a chance to interact with many of you today. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Well, thank you first to Kevin for your remarks. I think having gone to the earlier summit, to have somebody that can kind of give us a way of thinking about what we're going to do next, I think is necessary. The folks in this room are the folks that are going to help us get to this next place. You know this city. You very well know what you want to see in this city. We as council members hear that from you on a regular basis. And this is the time that we need you to help us roll up our sleeves and figure out how we as a city take what we've gotten, take what we've built, take how we've come together, and start to craft out what's next. What's next for us? What's next for the future generations that come behind us? And what do we want visitors to this city to know and understand about us and their experience in this city? So we are going to move to a number of breakout rooms, and I'm going to end up turning this over to the folks at TIP so that they can help you get to the right room and start to have those conversations. We have, I think it's 4, maybe a couple different breakout rooms, but I'm going to go ahead and let you do that.
Well, this has been amazing. I hope you've enjoyed it. Yeah? That's right. Thanks. This is good. Good stuff. Well, I'm going to talk about the breakout session and what you can expect as we move forward. We talked about the gold areas earlier. So on the screen there are the 3 and the room that will be assigned to that session. So Pick where you want to go. The overflow that you saw there, I think we're going to omit that at this point and see where you land and then make an assessment at that time. You will have a facilitator and a note taker in every session. So all you have to do is share your brilliant ideas. We will capture that. I want to talk a little bit about the rules for engagement, if you will. We want to make sure we're setting a tone. We assume positive intent. We listen to understand and remain open-minded. Be mindful of inclusive engagement and share the discussion place. Be aspirational, bold, and strategic. That's my favorite. We want to hear from you. We want your voice. My goal, this is personal, nobody else, I haven't even said it, I don't think. But when you see the plan, when it's over, I want you to say, I hear my voice in that plan. I said that in the plan. It's so important that we get your voice today. At this point, I think you see the breakout sessions. I got a couple of housekeeping. Kevin's books are going to be on sale. Old Town Books there's a table outside. You could get it there, and Kevin will be out to sign those books. Is that right? All right. So I think that'll be fun to have that. I think they'll be out there until about 6 o'clock. So you'll have some time after the session to go and make your purchase and get the book signed. All right. Are we ready? All right, let's go. So all of you who are going to stay in this room, I'd love for you to move up closer as we get closer to starting the session.
Yeah, so this is Edison.